where I want to share kind of how I've had an opportunity to brand myself being a student. And another interesting fact is data has actually been at the forefront of each experience that I've had, even when I didn't know it. So this is starting back in 2017 at my first co-op with City of Calgary, going over to the City of Vancouver in the project delivery branch as an engineering assistant for 8 months. Then going over to Suncor Energy as a co-op student for 12 months back in 2019. And finally, after finishing up my last year of online school at UBC, returning to Suncor on the Advanced Analytics team as a full-time employee. So starting off with the City of Calgary, this is where I had a chance to be a business continuity summer student and work with the software on hardware systems of Calgary 911 to better mitigate the impacts of any of those systems failing on the overall company. Over at City of Vancouver as an engineering assistant or informal project coordinator, I had a chance to work with several large civil engineering projects to help manage their budget and scope through project charters, as well as optimizing the resource allocation of employees within the actual branch itself. So definitely some data involved there. Moving over to 2019 was with Suncor Energy as an autonomous haulage system student. So that was working as a data analytics student to create Power BI apps for both desktop and mobile to better allow the operators and supervisors at site to see how the autonomous haul truck fleet was doing so we could better optimize the operational efficiency of them. And then finally, moving over to this year, this is where I returned to Suncor on the Advanced Analytics team as a data analyst, working on a mining project and also supply chain project to see how I can bring my visualization skills with Power BI to the organization. So now that we know a little bit more about my background, I want to jump into the first formal part of the presentation, which is going to be an introduction to data analytics, what it is, why it's important, and the so what, so why you should care. So before I even jump into that, data is a word that's thrown around quite a bit, and not everybody might always have the same understanding of it. So data analytics, data science, big data, prescriptive analytics, there's a lot of terms that are thrown around, and it's important that we make sure that we're equalized right now so we can all go into it with the same knowledge. So we're going to go back to that Menti. I invite you back into the app. You can either go right back to the web page, or if you have it open on your phone, just open it back up. It's still going to be on that last question screen, but I'll be changing it shortly. Or in case that you logged off, here's that QR code again that you can go and scan with your phone, or alternatively, you can go to menti.com again and log in with that code that we see on the screen there. So it's going to be the same one. So leave this open for about 3 more seconds, and then I'm going to jump back to the Menti, and then we're going to see if we can get some insight into what everybody thinks data means to them. So let's jump back here, and we'll go over to the next slide here. And so the question that I want to ask you is, what comes to mind when you think of the words data analytics? In the little box that you have there on your screen, just feel free to type in any words that you like. You can submit as many times as you like. There's multiple submissions allowed. And just type in what are some of the things that you think come to mind when you're thinking of data analytics. So go ahead and we'll see if we can get a couple responses here. And we'll see what we get. So maybe give this 10 or 15 seconds to see what people come up with. And again, it can be anything at all that you like. Just what comes to mind when you're thinking of data analytics. Perfect. So I see we have exploring people. It's quite interesting, actually. I haven't seen that one before. Insights is a good one. You can definitely gain some insights from those. I'm going to input a few as well here to kind of just help out, but we'll see if anybody has any other things that come to mind. Know about population. That's definitely in the field of statistics where we can learn about the mean, standard deviation, and we can look at our data to try to identify some of those facts. Information. Exactly. That's very true. Oh, there we go. Now we've got some people coming in. That's awesome. Trends is huge. You can always find trends, and I'm going to actually jump into that a little bit later because trends is how you inform action from data. That's one of the elements of data storytelling that we have. That's great. I'll maybe give it 5 more seconds. You can type in a few more if you like. If not, that's totally okay. And then we'll move on forward. But this is good. So at least we have some base understanding of what we think of when we come of data analytics. That's perfect. Okay, so I will put a pause here. But again, if you had a chance to participate, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. what we're actually going to do is I'm going to take this and we're actually just going to embed it right in the presentation, because I always like to keep a little part of me from these interactive components in the presentation itself. So we're just going to throw a new slide in there, get rid of those two, and paste it in. Perfect. So besides that, again, thank you for participating in the Menti, and let's continue with the formal part of the presentation here. And there we go, we've got our word cloud right in there, so that's going to stay there for you to see in the recording. So to start off, let's start with the base of what we actually think of when we think of data analytics. And so at its core, it's the science of analyzing raw data in the hopes of making informed decisions about that information. So it's definitely quite a broad term, and it can encompass many different types of data analytics and analysis. At its core, it's a type of information, and we can subject it to data analytics techniques to get insight to improve things in your business, company, or organization. Data analytics techniques can actually reveal trends and metrics that might otherwise sometimes be lost in the massive information we're dealing with millions of data points. And also, we can actually use this information to optimize business processes to overall increase the efficiency of your business or system. And so that's what it really is at its core. Taking a look, there are 4 primary types of data analytics that individuals or businesses or researchers can employ throughout their work. We start at the first level, which is descriptive analytics. And what this really means is what is happening. It's at its very base, maybe just you have an Excel sheet and you have a couple of height points of how tall are people, and you can just look at it without doing any analysis, any fancy interpretation, just kind of taking a very easy look at it to see, do we have correct data? Is the data clean? And it's also just a good way to kind of start looking at your data, just very high level. Going to the next stage here, we're looking a little bit deeper at diagnostic analytics. And this is why it is happening. So this is where we're looking at finding the causes of maybe some of the correlations between our data. And we're trying to actually look and identify patterns. And this is where those trends come in. Maybe is it trending upwards? Are we seeing some interesting, maybe some special dates if you're looking at an x-axis over time where we're getting dips in the data or peaks in the data? And you're really taking a little bit more of a diagnostic and an analytical approach to looking at what is happening and actually why it is happening as well. Looking at the third stage, this is where we're definitely getting quite deep, and this is predictive analytics. So we're looking into the future and we're trying to determine what is likely to happen in the future. If we're looking at a trend over the past 3 years, what do we expect to happen in the next year? And so for this, you now might be employing some data scientists or data engineers, where you now need to choose the correct machine learning algorithm. And also you need to be building a correct business strategy if you're looking at that level from an organization. Finally, looking at the most complex, but also one of the most high value adds, this is prescriptive analytics, action-oriented data analytics. What do I need to do? So this is where you're using some advanced analytics techniques and you're recommending actions to your audience. What should you be doing in order to get the best out of your business, your research, your company, the machine learning algorithm, or whatnot? This is really what we're trying to recommend to managers or executive levels. And this is, instead of the individual trying to interpret the data is interpreting itself through prescriptive analytics, and we are giving recommendations to our users for, we think you should do this to increase your free cash flow, your operational efficiency, your income, your research efficiency. The list goes on, but this is definitely something that you need a large team who has experience and commitment. At a personal level, probably descriptive or possibly diagnostic analytics is something that is much more reasonable. Where if you're looking at maybe companies or research labs within universities, you can now be looking into predictive or prescriptive analytics as potential value adds that you can be bringing to your team. Now let's talk about the so what. So why is data analytics important? I've told you about what it is and some of the different types, but so what? Why should you care? At its core, it's going to help your business improve your performance and help make informed decisions. It's very important because, again, it's going to optimize your business performance. If you have a chance from a business to implement this into your business model, this means that it can help your company reduce costs and identify more effective ways of doing business and storing large amounts of data. A company could also use data analytics to help make better business decisions and also help potentially analyze customer trends or satisfaction. And this could potentially lead to better products or services that you are employing for your consumers. So at its core, again, this is what it's coming down from the last slide, this prescriptive analytics. You are helping individuals make informed decisions to make the best possible options for increased efficiencies or free cash flow to help improve your business forward. So instead of the person making the decision, the data is itself understanding it, and it's helping you recommend a decision to move forward. So now that we've learned a little bit more about data analytics, the types of it, and why it's important, I want to move into the second main part of this presentation, which is going to be sharing what are some of the different career options and paths available for potentially you to become a data analyst if you're interested, or to see what are some of the options available out there as a prospective career. There's three primary types of roles kind of under this data analytics umbrella, if you will. There are many more, but these are the three top ones that I want to introduce to you today. The first one is data science. And data scientists are big data wranglers where they gather and analyze large sets of both structured and unstructured data. Data scientists will help analyze, process, and model data, and then interpret their results to create action plans for the companies or their organizations. The second type is a data analyst. And personally for me, I am specializing as a data visualization analyst, but it falls under the same umbrella as here. Data analysts can see how the data is used to try to help answer questions and solve problems through some of those prescriptive analytics. Data analysts will typically study to see what's happening today, to try to make trends from the data and also make predictions about the future. And then finally, we've also got your data engineers. Not to be confused with an actual engineer, data engineers have their own specific roles that they play in this data analyst umbrella. Primarily, data engineers are responsible for finding trends in data sets and also developing algorithms to help make raw data more useful to your enterprise. We have two types of data engineers. We have a pipeline-centric and a database-centric engineer. A pipeline-centric engineer is going to work along data scientists to try to help make them use of the data they collect. A database-centric data engineer is going to work primarily in the backend with data warehouses and pipelines to try to create more table schemas and make sure that the data working between the different data sets is coming in cleanly and all the data is being transferred well. So now that we know about these three roles, I want to go into some of the key informations of what they're about and what the type of role that it looks like. And I found this incredible graphic online that explains it very well. So I'm going to take you through some of these steps here. So again, let's start high level at what it looks like to actually be in the job description for these three types of roles. For your data scientists, again, this is where you're working with some of these machine learning algorithms to try to find data-led solutions for business challenges to key stakeholders. For your data analyst, you're going to work on gathering, reviewing, and analyzing data to try to identify some of these insights and trends to help make the business move forward. Finally, for your data engineer, this is where you're very focused on your backends, such as your infrastructure and your data architecture, and you may be even supporting other engineers or your data scientists to try to develop proper and robust information systems. Moving on to some of the key skills of what it looks like to be in these three roles. For your data scientists, you're definitely going to be wanting to have some machine learning and programming background, such as in Python or R, and you're definitely going to be using a lot of big data and some statistical modeling in order to develop some of these algorithms to try to interpret the data. For your data analyst, this is going to be definitely a little bit more front-end focused, where you're now going to be receiving some of that clean data from your typical data scientists, and you are going to have to try to interpret how to represent visually or audially. There's many different types of data visualization. We'll go into that today, but how you're going to try to represent this data to your end user so that they can very clearly understand what the story is of the data and what the main messages of it are. For your data engineer, this is again where you're working primarily in the back end with some definitely programming skills, and you could be working with data warehousing and data structuring as well. What does a typical day look like for some of these roles? So what would be the task requirements for your roles? For your data scientists, you're definitely going to be working to develop hypotheses and gather, organize, and clean the data. This is all leading towards providing these business solutions for the business challenges of your organization. As a data analyst, you're going to do a little bit of cleaning of the data yourself, even though the primary work is from the data scientist, but you're really going to be trying to identify the story of the data. What patterns are you finding? What insights are you determining? And how are you going to visualize this data to show it to the end user and tell them the story effectively? Finally, for the data engineer, this is where we're going to be working with managing and organizing some of the data, potentially building and testing data architectures, and also developing data processes such as data pipelines between the different databases that you're working with. Next, let's look at some possible career paths. So where could you be going if you choose to pursue a career in one of these three exciting fields? As a data scientist, you may want to specialize in maybe data visualization, data mining, or database management. But again, it's clearly working to create these machine learning algorithms to try to determine what is this data showing and making sure the data is clean. As a data analyst, you can go for it with a business analyst, and that's kind of a little bit of the role I play, a systems analyst or a data visualization analyst. And for your database engineer working in the backend, you could be a database architect, an administrator, or possibly move into big data engineering if that's something you're interested in. Perfect. So I'm going to transition us back to light mode. So just make sure your eyes adjust here carefully. Okay, we're back. So just to finish off here, I'll share a little bit more about some of the roles that I've held over the last 7 months in the advanced analytics team. And just being a data analyst doesn't mean that that's the only thing I do. There's definitely been a lot of variety that I've done. So data analyst is definitely one of them, but I've also worked as a business analyst to try to understand the project scope and identify what are some of the requirements we need to actually get this project off the ground. I've worked as a UI/UX designer, designing frameworks in Figma and Power BI so that the end user can see what the final product might look like. And I've also worked as a project coordinator to try to see how we can coordinate different resources and different technical skills of different individuals to try to build up the project team and establish it moving forward. So coming to the final part of the presentation, what I hope to leave with you today is some recommendations of what you can actually do if you want to try to take your foot forward and actually explore this data analytics field to see what you can learn, or if it's a prospective career that you want to pursue. So the first step, which you have already successfully completed, given that you've been paying partial attention to me over the last 26 minutes or so, is to take the first step to learn about the field. And I can confidently say that for everybody on the call and the webinar here today, that's what you've been here to do. That's what you've been learning over the last few while with me. And definitely you've taken this first step to learn. So kudos to you, you're already on the right track. The next step that you can do is you can actually look to build some of your technical skills required to be a data analyst or being in this data analytics field. So some useful skills that I could recommend is to definitely have a background in computer science or engineering or maths. These are typically fields where you need to use some logic problem solving and some technical thinking. If you have a background in statistics or programming, such as in R, Python, or SQL, those are all very beneficial. Or even using some front-end tools like Power BI or Tableau, which you can use to visualize your data. Or if you even have maybe some YouTube videos on how you can visualize data or how you can clean or wrangle or prepare data, these are also some good skills to have on your end. Work on some projects with real data. That's something else you can do. And as mentioned by Gusto back in the introduction, I did have a chance to work on some research projects and publications through my undergraduate years. And in my very first research project back in 2016, we actually had a chance, just for trial and error, to work with the Titanic data set from Kaggle.com, and that was kind of my first exposure for real data. You can, of course, obtain this anywhere you want online. You can use the Google data sets that are available online. You can use the US Census Bureau, but any projects where you actually have real data that you're just throw into Excel. Keep it super simple and just see what are some of the graphs you can generate. Maybe can you try to identify a trend in the data, such as the sales have been increasing over the last 3 years because of an increased sale of some type of product quantity. That's just a very generic example, but that's one of the best ways, just going and exploring to see what kind of data exists out there and throwing it in Excel, Power BI, Tableau, R, Python, your tool of choice, just to see what you can interpret from it. Some other recommendations is if you're a student or an entry-level employee such as myself, you can potentially attend some hackathons or those that have an emphasis on data analytics or dashboarding. For example, a year ago, I attended a Productathon, which is a product-thon, like a product hackathon, where within 24 hours, we had to create a product for an end user and interview them to try to see what would work best for them. So that was at UBC. So for me, that was a cool experience to, again, it was a little bit technical, but not too technical. Just having a sense to see what are some of the products that we can generate out of this. So that's a recommendation. Developing your personal portfolio. That can look like your resume, your curriculum vitae, your CV, posting on your LinkedIn, or just kind of sharing. For example, going to your LinkedIn and saying, just attended this awesome talk on data analytics and embarking on a journey from Andre, and this is one thing that I learned. I hope to look more into the data analytics field. This also has to do with personal branding, which is a whole nother topic, but this is something that you can be doing to gain exposure to data analytics and also promoting yourself to potential employers and colleagues that could be looking through your online media profiles and seeing, oh, he's actually got an interest in data analytics, even though he doesn't have, or they don't have that many skills. He or she might be a really good fit just because they've shown some interest in pursuing data analytics. So even a simple LinkedIn post can go a very long way, and this has to do with personal branding online. If you're looking to be a little bit more formal and you want to take a serious step, I would strongly consider and recommend you pursuing formal education. So this could look like an introductory course online, such as from Coursera or Udemy. There are tons available online. If you literally just in your Google search do intro to data analytics, intro to data science, you're going to have so many Google searches pop up. So honestly, any of them that you can go with, I can recommend all of them. Just make sure it has some reviews. If you take it a little bit more seriously, you can pursue that bachelor's degree, like I mentioned, in the maths, science, or computer science or engineering. Or if you're interested in pursuing a career as a data scientist or data engineer, you may potentially want to consider a master's degree in computer science or data analytics, as this is greatly going to increase your chances of being employed. For any students on the call or entry-level employees such as myself, go and apply even if you're underqualified. And the reason I say this is I definitely applied for a lot of positions in my undergraduate degree. I think in my second year, I applied for, I think, 60 or 65 jobs over a span of 2 months. So that was, I think, like 5 or 6 applications per week that I'm pumping out. And I got tons of rejection letters. But guess what? I'm now learning what's working, what's not working, and I'm getting experience writing cover letters and also tailoring my resume for that specific role. And let's say even if you apply, you may even get an interview, you may get some feedback, and even if you don't get that job in the end, you may have gotten through several stages and you would have learned so much from that process because now you know what skills you're missing. You can go and work and develop them, and then you can come back to your next interview in a month or two being that much stronger and that much more technically competent to help you land the role, which is exactly what happened for me with landing my role as a data analyst back in May of this year. So go and apply. Yes, it takes time. Yes, you can't just do copy pastes. You have to write them from scratch usually or use a few elements. But the time you put in and those applications that you really care about, those are the ones that you're usually going to get the highest response rate on from potential employers. And then finally, as the biggest takeaway that I can give for you, and this totally falls on your shoulders, get excited about data analytics. I'm definitely excited. I hope you can see that. Maybe I've helped some of you also become excited about data analytics from some of these learnings that we've shared, my experiences that I've shared, and some of these recommendations that I've provided to you. So again, that's just the biggest takeaway that I can give about you. Of course, you attended the call here today. So for that, I'm very grateful for that we've had a chance over the last half hour or so to have a chance to share a little bit more about what data analytics is, why it's important, what are some of the fields of data analytics that you can pursue, and finally, what are some actions that I leave with you if you want to take the next step on your end to pursue an interest in data analytics or even a formal career in this very exciting career track. So besides that, I'd like to give a very big thank you for you for attending, and also thank you to all the technical team and staff that helped make this webinar possible on the back end. I think for the next half an hour, I would love to open it up to some question and answers, which I believe Augusto is going to moderate for us. So besides that, feel free to type in your questions in the Ask a Question feature. And again, a huge thank you, and it's been a privilege speaking with you. Augusto, over to you for the question and answer period moderation.
Okay, thanks everyone for watching and joining this amazing live stream. Thanks, Andrew, really, it was amazing. We have some questions by the audience. Okay, one of the question is, why did you choose data analytics as a focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking. For me, it was actually very interesting just how it came about to be. In those first few co-ops terms that I was mentioning, here I'll open up this slide. My initial journey wasn't very data analytics focused, even though there had some data elements of it. The really big one started in this role, this 2019 co-op with Suncor Energy. That was kind of, here I'll get a laser pointer. This was the one that introduced me into data analytics. I had done some research in machine learning and civil engineering, and I published a few papers in it, but I really hadn't had the biggest chance to actually dive into data analytics on its own to see how I could clean the back end and then also how I could tell a story with the front end of the data to users. So this 2019 co-op term with Suncor Energy, I was just applying for, again, all of these jobs, just trying to get a role. I managed to land this role with Suncor, and I just loved this so much that I chose to no longer pursue a career in project management as I thought I would do after completing my 2018 term. And instead, it just kind of, that analytical engineering mind in me just kind of had a chance to sprout out, where I was now actually taking huge sets of data, having a chance to clean them, and then actually tell a story to stakeholders or end users, just like I'm sharing a story with you today, to try to see how we can improve the business. And then after completing this work term, I went back to UBC in 2020, and then graduating again just a few weeks ago, but starting in May, I applied for this role of a data analyst in a different team with the advanced analytics team, and then thankfully I got the role. And so that's kind of how my journey played out. I wasn't really expecting it, but again, it's just really what life gives you. So that was my journey. So I hope that answers your question, but if it doesn't, feel free to type a follow-up one in the chat, and then I'm sure Augusto will mention it.
Okay, thank you, Andre. The previous question was by Ashan from India. We have another question from Pablo. Pablo is from Peru. Is talking about new trends. Oh, it's a specific question. It's talking about new trends. Is the data analytics applied to cryptocurrency market? If yes, do you know how it's applied?
Wow, Pedro, that's a loaded question. Thank you so much. So I'll give a disclaimer again. I'm quite new into this field, and just personally, I'm not really following I'm following a little bit, but I honestly feel that you have more knowledge about me about the cryptocurrencies and crypto market today. I just kind of read a bit on the news. My gut feeling definitely says yes, you can use data analytics to look at past trends and try your best to predict the future. Of course, with the stock market, as we all know, predicting the future, it's a very bold statement. If somebody can make that, if somebody's, oh, I can predict the next 5 years and you're going to make, 200% return on investment with me, I'd be a little bit skeptical if somebody was saying that. The accuracy of it, that's what I'm skeptical about, but actually making predictions from past data, this can be applied to almost any field. So I'm very, very, very certain that yes, it is being applied to the stock market, specifically, like you mentioned in your question, the cryptocurrency field. More specifics than that, I honestly don't know, just because I'm not really following it. But I am very sure that if there is past data, which there is tons with stocks and trends, some people may be making predictions about where they think it's going. You could even go on Google, and I'm sure somebody online could give a better answer in some article than me today. But I am very sure that yes, data analytics trends is being used in the cryptocurrency market. To what extent, I'm not sure. But again, I feel it is. So I hope that answers your question. But if not, you can always send me an email and we can connect offline after.
Okay, thank you, Andre. We have another question. It's from Sarah from United States. And she said, do you have a mentor? If so, how did you ask to be mentored?
Sarah, yeah, thanks for calling in from the US. That's awesome. That's an awesome question. 100% yes. I've had mentors all the way through my undergraduate engineering degree and here in my full-time role back from 2015 when I started as a student, working all the way through to where I started full-time now. And I've got 3 mentors right now, one in data engineering, one in career management, and one in being a product owner and product management. So it's totally lots of different fields. So yes, I do. To answer the second part of your question, how to get a mentor, it really comes down to networking, I would say, and just being confident and just reaching out and maybe even, let's say if you're in school, you could talk to maybe one of your professors that you're interested in, or if you're working in the industry, just talking directly to your team leader or supervisor, just saying, hey, I have an interest in learning more about data analytics. I know it's not quite what our team currently does, but I hope I have a chance to learn a little bit more about this field. Do you have any colleagues or peers that you know that might be able to give me some exposure? And typically that's how the first conversation starts, just as a one-on-one coffee chat for maybe 30 minutes or an hour, where you're just getting to know this individual that you got connected with or that you reached out to, like a colleague, peer, professor. And really, if that first coffee chat goes well, then you can typically ask them, hey, I'd like to maybe make this a recurring thing. Could we maybe meet every week for 30 minutes or bi-weekly or monthly? It really depends on your time availability and the availability that they have. But typically how that conversation starts is just with an informal chat. And then if that chat goes well, you can ask them to meet regularly, and then you'll start to develop a formal relationship. I'll give one more small side note just for your awareness. There's also a lot of mentorship programs out there. So for example, when I was in the city of Calgary, there was like a student industry professional mentorship program. And at UBC, there's the engineering mentorship program, and I'm currently a mentor there. So you can also look at your university, or you can, if you're working at a company, you can reach out to HR and say, are there any formal mentorship or coaching opportunities available for me? If yes, definitely look to sign up for those or see when the next opening cohort is. Or if there aren't any formal programs, definitely taking that first approach of informally reaching out to somebody that you know, or asking your supervisor to try to connect you with somebody. Taking that first step is the tough part. Everything else is going to come usually much easier. And that's been my experience, at least. So I hope that answers your question, Sarah.
Great. Thank you, Andre. We have another question. It's for Danielle from United States also. And the question is, do you have any interview tips, recommendation?
Hi, Danielle. Thanks so much for your question. I know that's not the focus of this presentation, but I've been thinking about making another one about like career coaching and interviewing. So maybe even you asking this question gives me a bit more push to make it. So yes, definitely have some tips for you. I'll maybe keep it high level just for this Q&A one today. The one biggest tip that I could give is practicing online out loud before you go into your interview. Always having your 60 to 90 second introduction pitch just in your back pocket, just practicing that. So introducing yourself, what you are like. I'm guessing you're a student, or if you just started entry level, just graduated recently, having a good pitch of just telling about yourself, what your degree is, your university, maybe about some of your interests or projects that you can talk about, because your pitch is really your biggest first impression for that interviewer that's in the room with you. And if you mention a few small side notes, of course, they have all of their questions that they're going to ask you. But later, as you're answering the questions using the STAR technique, so that's situation, task, action, result, and transfer, using that START technique, you can just Google START interview technique. Just Google that on your own time. You can pull on some of your projects or experiences or teams that you worked with and kind of link it to that pitch. And that's going to make you look very well-rounded. And again, just practicing out loud. That's the toughest part. I probably was practicing for 20 to 30 hours for my interview for this data analytics role. Just going online, Googling top 50 data analyst interview questions, practicing literally every single one of them, even the ones that I didn't know, to try to learn what I could before the interview, and doing as much verbal practice as I could, because it's one thing to rehearse it in your head. It's another thing to speak it out loud. And speaking can be a tougher skill for a lot of people. So getting your phone camera, putting it out in front of you and videoing it yourself, like stare into that camera, it gives you the most realistic feel. And then just watching that video, maybe how many times did you say, did you pause somewhere? How many takes did it take you to actually do that interview prep? These are all good tips that I could advise for you for going and practicing out loud before, having a very solid pitch and introduction, and also just using that START technique, S-T-A-R-T. Google it, you'll learn more about it. But again, that's a whole nother topic, but I hope that this at least helps you just a little bit in your next interview coming up. And also good luck if you have any coming up.
Good recommendation. Thank you, Andre. Okay, we do not have more questions really. So thanks everyone again for watching and enjoy this live stream. Let me thank you again, Andre, for this amazing talk and for accepting this invitation. We have another question. Just
sure.
for today.
Sure.
It's Jawid from Dubai, and the question is: I am new to this field, but I'm interested in how to start.
Yeah, great question. Thanks so much for asking, and yeah, thanks for joining me from Dubai. So this is just going to come down to these recommendations part that I covered in my presentation of what you can do to get started. So even feel free to just take a screenshot of these 2 pages. So again, as I mentioned, with this first one, you attended this talk, so that's kind of a good starting point for getting just to know a little bit more. You can start looking into some of the skills and thinking, which of these skills do I want to tackle first? Because if you want to pursue data analytics as a professional field, at some point you're going to have exposure to all of these. So maybe if you're more of a computer science or programmer, you can potentially look into starting to learn about R or Python or SQL. Or if you're a little bit more front-end focused and you care about more user interactions and visuals and UI UX design, then you can potentially look into maybe learning more about Power BI or Tableau or data visualization. As well, you can take a screenshot of this one. You can try to attend some hackathons. You can pursue some formal education and just go and Google what are some entry data analyst roles, because even if you're not applying for them, you can just look at what their requirements and competencies are so that you can try to link my list that I've created here to maybe their list and see what are the overlaps. And then maybe that's what you can prioritize. Or even applying anyways with the limited skill set that you have, or that's what I'm guessing in data analytics, because let's say you might get some feedback. It may give you good experience writing a cover letter. And then let's say you do get an interview or pre-screen. Even if you don't get the job, they're going to give you some feedback, and you're always allowed to ask for feedback from your interviewers, whether they give it to you or not. So again, just this list that I've created here, that's my recommendation for how you should get started. And then also go online and then look at just like on Google or whatever search engine you have, entry-level data analytics, click on the top 5 results. I don't care what company they are, just click on the top 5, read through the pages to see what are the qualifications that that company is asking for, and then see which qualifications from that list match up with my recommendations from this list. And then that's what you can prioritize on learning. Or again, just going onto Coursera, YouTube videos, like go listen to a 30-minute YouTube talk. It'll probably cover a lot of what I covered. But again, those are some of the recommendations I have for you. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andre. Okay,